Are you primarily doing like what, Spotify or YouTube or
Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and there's like a couple smaller ones. I go through Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout takes care of everything.
what do you do?
Buzzsprout,
Buzzsprout?
like buzz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
They take care of everything, man. Basically, I upload all the audio on Buzzsprout, and then they send it out to Spotify, cool. Apple, I think Google. I have podcasts. I actually think they're going away, but there's a couple of other smaller ones that I really get no views on. But mainly Spotify, Apple iTunes, or Apple Podcasts is what I get my views on, and then YouTube I had to manually do that.
Okay.
One. But YouTube's not bad. YouTube's pretty.
So
cool.
we got to come out with some controversy, get you some views. What do you want to open up? What do you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. I'm not too much of it. I think the reason mine takes so long to grow, and I'm barely on like episode 13. So yeah, that's probably another reason. But I'm not clout chasing, man. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to like get anything, to send me to the, 100,000 views. Like if it happens naturally. You know what I mean?
So you just kind of like,
I just don't want to sell my soul for it. You know what I mean? Like start like putting people under and like if there's little hot topics for sure, you know what I mean? But I'm not geared towards that. You know how people are like going after the next big thing that's going on, like the controversies and stuff like that. I'm very interested in the person. Yeah. Because I talk so much, dude. Like whenever I'm like at places, my wife hates it because I'll be like 30, 45 minutes with somebody. And
complete stranger.
Yeah, just talking with them, man. It's just, I think people fascinate me. It's like, I've always told everyone, I wish I could live 1,000 lives and like be able to see like different cultures, different ways of living in different countries and be able to experience that. Because it's awesome, dude. I mean, I've only lived in my body, and to see what other people have gone through and like how they've gotten to where they're at, I think it's interesting, Yeah. And there's really no like shortness of like, I'm not geared towards one thing. Like I have so many different hobbies and things I'm interested in. I'm like it's like my music playlist. Like if you listen to it, you'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with that guy? Yeah.
Dude, I'm the same way. I like to collect a lot of stuff and, I've been reading Russell Brunson, who is kind of a forefather of Alex Hormozy. Hormozy came up studying under his stuff. And, he talks about becoming an expert, talks about running a podcast, doing a bunch of interviews to gain your knowledge. And for me personally, I've realized I was like, I'm pretty spiritual, like, love God, love Jesus, all that kind of stuff. But, when I'm making posts or Instagram posts, I can get very I can make it about the wrong things. I can make it about the clout or chasing my own notoriety. Hey, I gotta spread this. I gotta make an impact. I gotta make sales. And it seems like today, like everybody on Instagram is like doing something. It's like smoke and mirrors. Like, hey, do this, buy my book or buy this course.
Right.
And I'm not saying I don't want to sell things or I don't want to do that, but I am saying that like I have to lead with giving value first. Like it like when my heart's in the right spot, it's more considerate of like, hey, am I helping people?
Mm-hmm. Instead of just chasing the money.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like that is the continual thing that God has challenged me with on this journey is like, hey, where are you at? Are you serving the money? Are you serving me? And I mess up a lot. Like there's a lot of times where I'm like, continue to chase the money, but God keeps bringing me back. It's like, no, it's not about the money. It's about the impact. Who are you helping? How are you helping them? Keep staying focused on that.
I think that holds longevity, to be honest with you, because if you're chasing the money, I think it's a really short road because at some point people are going to see that. You know what I mean? I think it'll get exposed.
Maybe, but just keeping it 100. I think there's people who chase the money all the time and do phenomenal.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there are people out there who get singular minded in what they want to accomplish. And if that is wealth, they get it. They go after it. And then other people are like, well, why is it working out with him? And I'm trying to be altruistic. And it's like, I think you can have both. Like, I guess.
But do you think that at the end of the day, they're fulfilled? Do you think money fixes everything?
Well, I think those are two different questions, right? The second is no. I don't think money fixes anything. I think money's a magnifier of what's going on internally. But I do think that, I don't think it's bad for somebody to target like, hey, I want to be wealthy. Just like one of my fighters might be like, hey, I want to be world champion. It's like, well, oh, you shouldn't be world champion. You should just go around and fight for the joy of fighting. I'm not here to judge somebody's why. I'm here to magnify what's inside and get you to live authentic to what you've got going on.
Right.
So I try to judge as little as possible. It does come out, but at the end of the day, if you want to go make a bunch of money, like awesome. But what I can say for me is, I got to provide for my family, honored. But at the end of the day, like God has given me a mission that I'm here to build a kingdom. I got to have impact, and building the kingdom means developing character and values in individuals and organizations, like helping them shine their light.
All right, man, we've already opened it up, huh? So we got Caleb here today.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, nice meeting you, man. Yeah. I love it. Love what you got going on here.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. We're trying. I've been diving into your content for the last couple weeks now, and I love it. I love it, man.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I love it. I think that the mental preparedness of not only, I think what you deal with is mainly fighters, business, the business side of things, with people in business, but also just daily life, people who are 9 to 5, I think that's something that's very overlooked. I think everybody tries to push the physical preparedness, which I 100% agree should be a priority, but I think also the mental preparedness is very crucial as well, and they kind of go hand in hand. I'm very interested today to understand what a mental coach is and like what it is that you do. So I'm hoping you can kind of help us out here and explain that.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, I hear a lot of people say something to the effect of like, oh, your sport or whatever is 90% mental. And I don't buy into that. Like, so I'm, when it comes to mental coaching, like, you need it, you got to have it, but I am not going to overvalue my worth in somebody's life. Like you can have great success focusing on the physical. But the issue that I find is most people don't invest in the mental. And so when it comes to a competition or an endeavor, that's their area of weakness. I mean, what you feed grows. You're going to hear me say that a lot. What you feed grows. If you're always feeding the physical, well, great. You're probably in great shape. You're doing all the things. But if you never train your mind, you need both.
Yeah.
So I don't say like, oh, mind is better than body or what. No, you need both. Like it's just, as a society, as a culture, fight culture, people are used to buying strength conditioning, nutritionists, training at gyms, all this stuff. And this mental coaching area is like, well, what is this? Do I even need this? And that's where I feel like I'm like, like if you want to be the best, you do. Mm-hmm. What do I do? That's a great question. Again, my mission statement is to develop character and values in individuals and organizations. There was a coach by the name of John Wooden, UCLA basketball coach, voted ESPN's greatest coach of all time. And what I really took from him in my come up was that he focused on the character of his athletes. And when he had men of character playing for him, they not only did well on the court, but they did well off of it. And that can be kind of tough as far as like a sale of like, hey, I'm going to help you be a better man or a better woman. And, we're going to dive into what your values are and you're going to live authentically to that. But the end result is it creates peace of mind, which I think is one of the highest goals that everybody on this planet is attempting, whether they go through money or accolades or competition or whatever. Everybody's trying to get to a sense of peace. Do I feel good about myself? Am I happy? And I should clarify, happiness is different than peace.
Yeah.
But peace, power, which, people could say confidence, but power is being consistent in what you think, what you say, and what you do with the things you can control. Mm-hmm. And performance, we want to do well, right? And then if you have these things in place, ideally that will lead to the fourth P, which is prosperity. Mm-hmm. So when I come into somebody's life, I'm looking for disconnects. Where are your values not in alignment with what you're saying or what you're doing? And then I don't tell you how to live or what to do. I just hold you accountable for what you want. A good teacher will draw that out from you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in a nutshell, maybe a little bit about what I do.
Yeah. And then anybody who's coming to you for this knowledge, to understand and be able to change their mental views on things, they can't, it's not that you can just help anybody, right? They have to want to be helped.
Dude,
correct?
That's 100%.
Yeah.
So I've, especially in the executive space, I have been to companies and I tried it the other way. Court ordered therapy, not the most successful thing.
Right.
Like you hit the nail on the head. Like I ask for 3 things when I work with somebody. You got to be open, you got to be honest, and you got to be committed. Right. If we have those things, we can be very successful through my program. But if those things are missing, that compromises the results I can get. Yeah. And for a long time, I kind of was, the Jocko Willink, like kind of philosophy of extreme ownership, right? Mm-hmm. I would take ownership. I'm like, oh my God, I'm failing these people. I'm not doing it. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, I can't like make them want it more than I can want it. So, I'd get called into an organization and it oftentimes it would be, hey, we want you to work with these problem employees. Can you help them get them engaged? And, what's interesting enough, like one of my clients has gained more trust in me from saying no to those things and being like, hey, actually, I don't think you need to be investing a lot of time and dollars in this employee. We probably need to rethink our strategy of how we're going to handle this individual. Mm-hmm. And turning down work from that, they're like, oh, well, this guy isn't, like I said, he's not in it just for the money. He's actually here to help us. Mm-hmm. And then, 6 months later, that individual may or may not be with the company. And they're like, wow, like you appreciate what you did there. And then they'll start working with me. I'm like, yeah.
If you were to recommend how somebody is to get to that level to where they have that want and drive to be able to want to change, mm-hmm. what do you recommend? I mean, is there something like, or do they just have to have that in them?
Yeah, it's another great question, man. You're coming with them. Mm-hmm. Transformation begins with a sobering moment when an individual looks at their life and they're like, this is not what I wanted or I envisioned. And very quickly that can devolve into negative self-talk, where people are really harsh on themselves. I've been really harsh on myself, and I wouldn't encourage that. Mm-hmm. We want to be honest and sober. So I'll give the instance of, recently, I've lost about 20 pounds. I went through this weight loss challenge. Like before I did that, I was getting ready to have a powerful why. I was getting ready to have my son. And I was like, I am starting late in life. I don't want to be both an old and a fat dad who can't play with my kid or go do things. Right. When I couldn't get my suit jackets buttoned, I was like, hey, this isn't okay. Like, right. I coach all these people to be, their best selves. And like, here I am announcing fights or doing whatever. And I can't even button my suit. I was like, this is a problem.
Right.
I guess it came from a source of pain, like discomfort, like, hey, this is not okay. That reality hit me. Mm-hmm. And again, very quickly, I can like devolve into, oh, you're lazy. You're a fat piece of shit. What are you doing? And it's like, no. There's a difference between recognizing the truth, which is like, this is not okay. I'm meant for more, and beating yourself up. Mm-hmm. I very rarely, if ever, encourage somebody to like beat themselves up. But I do challenge people to look at themselves honestly about where they are and where they want to be. And if there's a gap there, then I'm going to help you figure that out.
That's funny that you say that, because I've always thought the pain and putting yourself down was actually the motivator. Because mm-hmm. that's kind of what I've done in my life. I've been up and down in weight. I've been up and down in life, mentally, physically, everything. And I've always been the one to be very hard on myself and be like, hey, you're fucking fat. Like, get in shape. You're lazy.
And it works.
And it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on period of my life, there's sometimes where I've just said that to myself and become very depressed.
Right.
And even lower than what I was. And then there's some times where I think I've hit bottom so much, it's like, well, I don't have anywhere else to go but up now. And mm-hmm. and I'm tired of staying here. I've been doing this. I've been crying like a bitch for a year now. All mm-hmm. right. Let's do something about it, or even having friends or family that, I'm a big proponent of tough love. You know what I mean? And I have had people tell me like, dude, man, you got to do something, man. Like, you don't look like you, man. Or, have friends mess with you, man. Like, damn, dude, like, go lift some weights, man.
A little frumpy.
Yeah. You're getting a little round over there, man.
Yeah.
And, or even my daughter, I always crack up, but my 13-year-old, I used to, I'd have my shirt off. I'd be like, yeah, look how, Dad, he's looking pretty nice. She's like, Dad, you're fat.
Yeah.
And that'll hit, you know.
You want the sobering moment.
Dude,
give it
but
to kids. Yeah.
Kids are honest. Kids are completely honest, man. And I love that about them, that, and some would be like, just ignore it. But to me, it's like, well, I don't want to be the fat dad. Like, I want to be like, look like Superman to them. You know what I mean? And hopefully that will, if I am the example that they see of taking care of themselves mentally, spiritually, physically, they will do that as well. Hopefully,
100%.
You know what I mean? That'll trickle down to them. But yeah, man, I mean, it's kind of crazy that you said that. So what you're saying is that to not beat yourself up too much then is to use that, kind of harness that as fuel.
Well, look,
but don't bring yourself down to a point to where you can't move. Like you're just stuck in that mindset, that negative mindset.
Kind of like, let's be real. Like it works. Okay. Like beating yourself up works.
Right.
I'm not denying that, but it doesn't often yield peace. And again, when we started this call, like I'm big on peace of mind. I want the results and I want to feel good on doing it. Mm-hmm. I call it, with my athletes, competing out of a sense of desperation or inspiration. And human psychology is pretty simple.
Right.
We move away from pain. We move towards pleasure. So if you're wanting to change your life, you can magnify the pain. You can build it up, right? And a lot of people do this and they beat themselves up when they do that. And again, it can be very, very effective. You can get very good results beating yourself up. But one, it sets up negative patterns. Like you hit these results and then you can regress or self-sabotage because it's like, well, this is how I get change. So I'm going to continue to run this pattern of yo-yoing because this is how I get activity. And we don't know we're doing it, but it's like, I hit a certain income level or hit a certain weight level. And it's like, yeah, I'm good. But now let me like trickle back down because we almost use that to stimulate action.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, two, like, again, it can be effective. And I coach a lot of people through this. I'm like, we can stack the deck on your why you're transforming. Mm-hmm. But if you want to set up more healthy, positive patterns, we can have a why that pulls you from a place of inspiration rather than desperation. And one more note, like there's a difference between beating yourself up and being honest.
Right.
Like your kid was being honest with you. Like, Dad, you're fat.
Yeah.
That wasn't mean, she's not like, you're fat, you're lazy. And like my inner monologue will make it negative and taint that. But like being honest and looking in the mirror and being like, hey,
she was being completely objective about it.
Yeah. I'm obese. And I think, again, transformation occurs from that state of mind. No judgment, just this isn't okay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get too theoretical here, but there's a philosophy of like different ego states called transactional analysis. Mm-hmm. It was real popular in the 70s. And it says that we have an adult, a parent, a child, and an adapted child ego state that kind of goes through our mind. The adult is the logical one. It's like a computer. It knows, hey, if I want to do this, I got to get this. There's no emotion, no anything. It's just like, you're fat. If you want to lose weight, you need to get this. Mm-hmm. The parent is what coaches results. And oftentimes that's where our negative self-talk or baggage comes into play. And it's maybe not even our own original voice. It might be something that we inherited from our early developmental stages or social media. The child, the natural child, is one that like is full of that spark of life. It's like, hey, I want to go do this. I'm excited about BJJ. I want to go make money. I want to be Superman. Whatever it is, it's enthusiastic. That's our natural life force and energy. Mm-hmm. Our adapted child, not to be confused with the natural child, is what responds to our parent voice in conditioned states. So I beat myself up with my parent voice. You're fat, you're lazy, you got to work hard or whatever. And my adapted child's like, oh man, you're right. Yeah, I got to go do this. And it has this cued response to do it. If in a perfect world, we want to have our regular child, our natural spark for life and enthusiasm, talking to our adult. Here's the routes. Here's the things that I need to do. Here's my natural flow of energy and the motivation to do it.
Could you touch more on the difference between peace and happiness? Because I think that's one issue that I have personally, is being at peace and being happy, because I thought that was the same thing.
Yeah. In Western culture, there is a big push for everybody to be happy. And the reality is that is one sliver of the emotional spectrum of what we go through. Mm-hmm. And life doesn't work that way. There is suffering. There is pain. And in a weird way, I appreciate all the emotions that I feel. I tell my athletes, I'm never going to ask you not to feel. And when you curb your feelings, you don't just get rid of the bad ones. You also curb the good ones too. When you start to try to live in this inauthentic fake bubble.
Right.
If you gave me a car, if you're like, hey man, we're going to give you this Audi, or we're going to, give you a new Tesla. It's like, I'm going to be pretty happy. But that lasts that long. But peace I can have in any situation or circumstance. To me, peace is a consistency between who I see myself and authenticity of how I see, how I think, how I feel, and what I say. Mm-hmm. My values with how I'm living. And I can have peace in suffering. You give me a bad day, a bad year, bad economic status, I can still maybe not be happy, but I can be at peace with how I'm living. Mm. Happiness is fickle. It's going to come and go. Peace is a through line through everything.
Yeah. And I know a lot of the times when I refer to Andrew Tate, a lot of people kind of roll their eyes, but I think a lot of people have a hard time differentiating between entertainment and, some of the things that he talks about that are actually real. And he always says that people rely too much on trying to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And that's not, I don't think that's something, if you look at the Stoic kind of aspect of it, I think everybody always thinks that they have to have an opinion about something. And I think that's where that peace comes from. If you stop having an opinion about everything in life, stop thinking of, I need to be this way. I need to be this way. I need to feel this way. And just do things like just day by day, just live life. I think that's kind of where that peace comes from, right? I think sometimes we get a little wrapped up in our heads too much of overanalyzing everything. Is that kind of how you feel about that?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is kind of presence and being, mm-hmm. and I definitely think peace can be an offspring of that.
I think that's what hurts our peace. I feel like that we kind of think too much about things, or think we should have everything,
Well, and what you're describing there is often a person who is living for the future, not in the present.
Right.
Or in the past, right? I have regrets, or I have things
which is pretty common.
Yeah, that are making me depressed or sad, mm-hmm. or I'm thinking about the future, which is making me anxious or nervous, versus just living in the moment, mm-hmm. which is like, hey, you know what? I feel hungry, or I do feel a little bummed today or sad. That's okay. This is what sad feels like.
Yeah.
I don't have to try to manipulate it. I don't try to manufacture. We can, but I don't have to manufacture an emotion of happiness if I'm feeling sad. I'll just feel sad. To process an emotion, you got to feel that emotion. And it's weird because people are feel like, certain emotions we can't have and other ones we can. I'm like, no, man, this is just, let's say that I were to take away your ability to feel pain and you touch a hot stove and you're like, ooh, that's hot, man. Well, I could be like, you know what? I'm never going to I'm going to take away your pain anytime you can touch as many hot stoves as you want. Well, if you do that, you're going to burn away the flesh on your skin, but you're not going to feel it. You're going to be like, oh no, it's fine. That response is to indicate, well, something's wrong. I shouldn't be touching a hot stove. Well, it's kind of the same thing with your emotions, anxiety or depression. They're not inherently bad. They're pointing to something that is awry in your value system and in your life. I don't want to take those things away.
Got you. But sometimes physically you can stop easier than you can mentally, feeling that pain, right?
Or numb. Yeah. Drugs, alcohol,
right.
Sex, spending.
Right.
And this is what people do. They don't either experience their emotions, or they'll manufacture emotions, or they'll deny them. I mean, there's a lot of things that people do to kind of navigate to get their own sense of peace. And I mean, if it works, great. I'm not here to judge that, but I've just found in my life and in the life of my clients, like that's not always the best route.
I think the biggest mental pain is what you just said, people not living in the present, people living in the past or too much in the future. How does one kind of block that out and stay on their path, live in the moment, instead of always either what happened before or what's going to happen?
So the brain doesn't work with, it only affirms what we feed it. So if you're like, hey, don't freak out, it doesn't hear don't, it just hears freak out. It works on replacement. So if you are like worried about the future or the past, I can't tell you like, oh, hey man, don't worry. Just don't worry about it, or don't think about it, because that's not going to help anybody. Your brain takes a very active posture in what it needs to do. So rather than say, oh, don't worry, or don't think about your past, or don't whatever, I'll encourage like, hey man, what are you grateful for today? And when you give it these like replacement thoughts, it shifts to focusing on what's in front of you. So you got to work replacement, not what you don't want to feed, but what you do want to feed.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest struggles right now for a lot of people is overcoming what happened in the past, having that hold you down, and then also trying to chase the future so much. Always, I want this. I want to make more money. I want to be healthier. I mean, all these things. And really, if you just live in the moment and just do the daily, be disciplined, do the daily grind of, taking care of everything you need to take care of, all that stuff will come, you know what I mean? And, but yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear from a lot of people is, and even myself, I deal with, overcoming those things.
Well, there's the message people want to hear, and then there's the message people need to hear.
Yeah.
The message people want to hear is that like, hey, I had all this trauma or all this pain, and this is why I live this life, and this is okay because of my past or because of these things that happened. That's based and rooted in like Freudian psychology, like, trauma, cause and effect. But like Adler psychology says, no, we live in accordance to the goals that we want to manifest presently. And we will make meanings, which is kind of empowering, of our past, our present, and our future to get or achieve whatever goals we want in the moment. And again, why this is a message people need to hear versus want to hear is because it does restore personal power and responsibility. Well, if I'm responsible for my success or my peace or my happiness, then I can't blame the past or the future or my environment or my circumstances. I have to take ownership of that.
Right.
And it's tough to do sometimes because it requires work.
Yeah, it does. That's a lot of work. Shifting gears here, what you do, who is majority of your clientele? Are you only fighters, or do you do?
Yeah, so I started with fighters, but I'd say probably, the dynamic has definitely shifted over especially the last year or so. It used to probably be about 60% fighters, and then I'd have, maybe 20% NFL, and then maybe another 20% executives. And now it seems to be about 40 or 50% fighters, 20% NFL, and my executives have kind of gone up to fill out the remainder, 30, 40%.
Yeah, I'm very curious because, these guys are, elite in what they do, whether it be in their area, in the world. And still then they face the same struggles as a lot of everyday people, that the mental side of it. What is it that you kind of help them with?
Yeah.
Like to overcome their sport, or their trade or.
Yeah. Well, the common through line with all of these people is that at their heart or their core, they are fighters.
Yeah.
Like they have this thing that's like, I'm going to fight for this. This is what I want to create. And oftentimes when people do that, they're going to enter the realm of uncertainty. And that's scary, right? That's like, oh my God, can I do this? Like I just got signed for a $40 million contract on a new team. Yeah. What do I do? Hey, I've got a contract where I'm going to fight this dude in 8 weeks. Like I've got to get to this point. It's pressure. right? I'm inheriting a company. I'm a managing position in this company. Like, how do I do it? I, you know, don't know the best BJJ or MMA. I certainly can't play, sports or football the way my athletes, and I've never run a $500 million company. But what I can deliver on is you operating consistently with who you see you are, like who you think you are, and challenging that perception of self to be the guy that's like, no, I've been living to this line, but I was meant for this one. And you know that inside. Again, that's that kind of inner child. It's like, no, I know I want these things. I'm like, okay, well, let's bolster that up and let's remove those limiting beliefs that get in the way of us achieving that.
Right.
And so I help people a lot with like building their confidence and clarifying their vision.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are some of the things that, I kind of gravitate more towards fighters just because who I know? What are some of the common things that they go through, like before a fight, kind of during camp, what you do to kind of help them out, get through that, those nerves, the pressure of that fight coming up?
There's a ton of case specific things. Hey, I start too slow. I'm a slow starter. Or, hey, I don't know why I don't fight the way that I train. For some reason, when training, I can beat everybody, but in the fights, like, I just implode. Or, hey, I'm reaching this new level. I'm now in the UFC. Like, what do I got to do to make it here? And I'm riddled with doubt, and I didn't have these things before. Or my partner outside of the ring or the cage is, we've got some serious issues that are coming up, or addiction or different things. And, in each of these things, I think kind of what makes me unique as a coach is I'm able to adapt to the individual and the context of the individual of what they're going through, and help them kind of, again, navigate to a sense of authenticity of like, this is who I am. This is my identity. These are my values. And then I just hold them and encourage them to that. Like, I don't have to tell you your values. If you told me like, hey, I've got this dream of having this podcast and doing all these things, and then, every Thursday, Friday night before your podcast, you're going out and getting schnockered.
Yeah.
It's like, well, bro, like what do you want?
Yeah.
And why are you doing these behaviors? So I don't often give people the answers, but I ask compelling questions that challenges their soul to come up with their own solutions.
Yeah, I didn't think, I guess I did think about that, but not only are they in a camp that's hard enough, but also personal life too. I mean, that plays a big factor on them trying to be mentally prepared for something, a big event that's coming up,
Yeah. And I mean, I think most fighters would admit that their past or their early developmental years were riddled with a lot of pain.
Right.
Broken relationships or bullying or
childhood. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just running the gamut. And so there have been camps that I've been through with people that address these things to release guilt or shame or fear or anger so that they can go fight with more freedom. And again, what I'm hanging my hat on is you can take an athlete and we talked about this. Pain is a motivator.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot in the boxing world. They'll feed that. They'll feed that pain. Yeah. They'll feed that like, oh, we want them mean. They want them mad. Look at all the shit that happened to them in life. Like, stoke that fire, and it will be very effective for creating a killer.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to create a man who is rooted in peace and identity, who also wins. I want both. I don't want to compromise.
Control their emotions. Yeah.
Well, yeah, control their emotions and also like not manufacture states of pain to get results. I think pain works, but it's not the only thing that works.
Mm-hmm.
You can have peace of mind and win in an abundance mindset, just like you can win in a pain mindset.
Right. What is an abundance mindset? I hear that a lot.
For me, I think it's one that hopes in what is good and is rooted in authenticity of who I am.
Okay.
Grateful for what I've got. I so often think that we just are always looking at the next thing. Oh my God, I need this next thing. And
living in the future. Yeah.
And I'm not knocking goals. It's great to have goals, but when you can really send out a vibration, if you want to talk about my energy workers out there, of like, no, man, I am so happy. I am so grateful for what I've got. That, like, you're not going to be happy if you don't, peace is before you today. right? Mm-hmm. It's not tomorrow. It's not in the things that you get or obtain. It's not even in the belt or the title. You'll feel happy for a moment, and then it'll be like, what's the next thing? This isn't enough. I thought it was going to be more. And I've literally had that happen with some of my, world champions. They get the belt and they're like, yeah, it was great. It's awesome. I wouldn't change anything. But at the same time, this wasn't filling that hole in my soul, like that this disconnect that I have.
Yeah, you see that a lot after a fighter's career too, right? Of not having that fulfillment anymore. How do you help them out? Have you helped anyone post fight career or post NFL or?
Yeah, I think that's one of the more challenging individuals to work with. I've done it a few times because, and not challenging in a bad way, just because they have seen so much and experienced so much that it's like, dude, I've been on the run. Like, I've seen the highs and lows. Now what? There is, I don't think, short of like maybe combat in the military, I don't think there's very much that gives you the same rush as going into a cage and fighting and winning and dominating another person.
Yeah.
So when you get out of that, it's like, hey man, it's almost like a hardcore drug. I've gotten used to having this sense of adrenaline, this sense of thing. Now what? What do I do? And I help people.
What is my purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, I help people reframe or their identity. I mean, again, it comes back to identity. A lot of people will identify with what they do, not who they are. And again, I do my best to make people bigger than their profession. You're bigger and more than just a fighter. You're bigger and more than just a father. We'll look at what we do and it's like, oh, well, how would you describe you? Who am I? I was like, oh, I'm a dad. I'm a podcaster. I'm a business owner. I'm a fighter, UFC fighter. And people hang their hat on this and they're like, that's cool. I'm a mental coach. I was like, no, man. That's your profession. Those are the things you do. Who are you as a person? If I plucked you out of this profession, if I took all this away, you're still there. Who are you?
Yeah. You say you don't train, in BJJ or you don't do football or, but I've heard that before you started doing this mental coaching, you were a CPA?
Still a CPA.
Or still a CPA? Okay.
I did. I trained MMA, I don't know, 7 years ago. Trained it for a couple of years. And in college, I did Taekwondo, competed in Taekwondo tournaments and stuff, which is, point sparring, whatever. And growing up as a kid, did that too. And I played football. So I've dabbled.
Yeah.
I've dabbled.
Kind of where I'm getting to is that I don't believe that you need to exactly be in those professions, but you've gone through your own struggles through life and, trying to understand what makes you content with life and finding your inner peace, because from what I've heard, some of the stuff I've listened to on you, that you kind of gotten to a point in life to where you were like, is this it? Kind of facing those mental struggles that, in your own lane, but that other people face too in their own lane.
Yeah. So one of the biggest criticisms, especially in the fight community, probably more than, it's weird, even more than like my NFL players or other sports. I've worked with ballerinas. I've worked with all different kind of folks. They are very much like, well, hey, if you haven't been in the cage or you haven't walked this, then you have no right to be able to like teach or coach or help me out. And while I can respect that opinion, I think that they're doing themselves a disservice by not taking external counsel and being, as Bruce Lee calls it, having an empty cup, right? I mean, if you're already full and you already know all the answers, well, then how are you going to learn? How are you going to grow?
Right.
And again, absolutely. Like you're right. I haven't competed in the UFC. I also haven't won a Super Bowl. And I sure as shit haven't, balleted in a tutu, doing my, spins and kicks and stuff. But I have been able to deal with trauma and the human condition of handling and managing emotions and excelling in personal relationships and staying focused on goals and achieving these things. Like these things I'm pretty proficient in. And, that seems to be advantageous to somebody who is success or wealth is contingent upon them being at their best self.
Right. Take me back to where was that moment to where you actually wanted to shift into what you're doing now? Was this something?
2015.
2015?
Yeah. So 2015, I had a nightmare of a year. I tore my Achilles and I was down for 6 months, gained a bunch of weight. My job at the time, I was working in this like audit consulting profession. We had a slowdown in business and my salary got cut by like 20%. We just bought a house, which was great timing. I was like, well, great. Here my money goes. My health is going. And then my main mentor, my grandfather, died that year. And again, we talk about sobering moments. Like that was a big one for me. I started asking myself the questions of what is life about? What am I doing? Because in a cocktail party or on paper, I've hit all of my goals. CPA, working in mergers and acquisitions, making good money, doing all this stuff. But I was not at peace and not happy with where I was at. And when I asked myself how I wanted to live and how I wanted to die, because of seeing my main mentor and facing the sobriety of death, it's coming for us all. Mm-hmm. I realized I was like, well, my grandfather served his community, made okay money, was good at what he did, served God and loved God and helped out a lot of people. I was like, that seems like a pretty good life. Mm-hmm. Like that seems to be, nice. And when I looked at what I was best at, it was never accounting. It wasn't being a CPA or wasn't doing audits or merger documents or any of this stuff. I'm good at helping people. Mm-hmm. So I was like, why am I not doubling down on this? So in that year, I started to kind of dabble, dip my toe in and do mental coaching for free. I had no qualifications, no nothing. Like, again, I was a CPA. I was like, well, let me read books on sports psychology and see what I can do. And worked with a 155-pound amateur. We won a belt. I was like, oh, okay, nice. Maybe we got something here. Kept learning, studying war tactics, philosophy, religion, whatever I could. Got certified in, as a master hypnotist, certified in NLP, all of these different things. And the results followed just from kind of grinding it out, working with people in the trenches.
Where did you first see mental coaching? Like, did you come across something?
Yeah.
Like on the internet?
Yeah. I was watching the UFC and I'd heard about mental coaches being used in the UFC. And I was like, I was a fan. At first I was like, whoa, I can do this. If there's one thing I can do, it's like help people.
Yeah.
Like I can relate to people very, very well. So I was like, why don't I give this a go? Again, I was looking at, well, what am I good at? I was never going to be the best accountant, but I have a strong conviction that I can be one of the greatest mental coaches in the world. That's a natural developed gift that has come up through me and my upbringing that, I was like, well, let me give this some wheels and just go with that. So I did it.
Through your upbringing, is there things in your life that you faced, obstacles, challenges that have kind of helped you understand the mental side of all that? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, who wants to hear that shit though? Yeah, no, I definitely have had my own stuff that comes up. But my grandfather was a big influence on me. He was a Southern Baptist minister,
right?
So even from a very early age, I was going with him to funerals, hospitals, weddings. I mean, like being in that environment where you have this person who is aiding people in life. And then my mom was a teacher.
Yeah.
So, I'm very good at learning material and teaching material as well as meeting what I call the soul. Like, hey, what are you struggling with? Getting real and being authentic in that realness. And I think that's honestly maybe one of my biggest benefits. Like that's what my athletes appreciate the most is I don't kind of what you see is what you get. I'm not going to, try to foo it around. It's like, no, I'm going to meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
And we're going to be real about it. And I have I'm gifted in that.
Right. Who are some of the athletes you've worked with? Are you able to talk about some of them? I know you've talked about some on some shows I've listened to you on.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about some definitely are,
more private.
Yeah. They want to remain confidential, but so I've got, I've worked with Matt Brown. I did a couple camps with him. I did his last one when he set the knockout record. And I did the one when he did the immortal elbow. I don't know if you've seen that clip of him laying out Diego Sanchez. Oh, you got to watch it. It's pretty sick. And then I've got Devin Clark, who's in camp right now. He's got a fight coming up, I believe, in February. UFC guy, Charvarius Ward. He used to be a cornerback for the Chiefs and then got purchased by the 49ers. They traded over there and got a pretty hefty contract, which that's pretty exciting because even though I'm a Chiefs fan, 49ers are looking good this year. And, you know, I've worked with Super Bowl champions, but this would potentially be my first one that I've coached through during the Super Bowl. I guess I kind of worked with a Chiefs guy who won it a couple years ago. But yeah, those are a few. Kevin Ross, like, you know, Muay Thai world champ. I mean, I just got through camp with Christine Pereira, who was BKFC world champ, bare knuckle boxing. I don't know if you've seen her, but she's an absolute savage. Like she's fun.
I think I've seen some of your clips on Instagram of her.
The hypnosis stuff. Yeah.
The hypnosis stuff's very interesting to me, man. What is that? Like,
what is it?
Like what? Like I don't even know what to ask about it. I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it before.
Mind control.
I'm gonna have to tell you. I have some skeptical hippo eyes. Yeah.
Did you watch Get Out?
No, I don't think I've watched
I think there's a lot of misconceptions of what hypnosis is. Yeah. Most people are like, oh, it's mind control. I don't want to do this. Or like, I'm Christian. Like, get that foo-foo away from me.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I'm saying. Like, you know, I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to knock it. But I am a little skeptical. I'm like, is that, you know, what is it? Like, what is it that, what does it help benefit for the person that's undergoing that?
This is a big topic. So, the research, like the science says that there is maybe about 20% of people who can't be hypnotized.
Right.
Me and my gut disagrees. I think everybody can be hypnotized. I think we're hypnotized all the time.
Right.
It is getting into an elevated or relaxed state through a flooding of message units, things that come in that will cause you to associate to different responses, fight or flight. That's kind of a very science definition. But if we look at this more practically, do you ever see that movie It?
Yeah, I've seen it.
So back in the 80s, It came out, right? Before that, everybody loved birthday clowns, Bozo the Clown, all this stuff.
Right.
But then you got Stephen King comes along, is like, I'm going to ruin this. I'm going to scare the shit out of little kids. And it worked, right? We go to this movie theater. We see this movie. We're flooded by lights, sounds, in a relaxed state. And the next thing we know, we're feeling a very real emotion of fear to a clown. And we begin to associate, well, clowns are evil. You know, clowns are scary when they used to be associated to joy and birthday parties. Mm-hmm. That's hypnosis. Marketers use this all the time. You know, you see a Coke commercial and it's like smiles and Coca-Cola, smiles and Coca-Cola. And what do you think? Like when you see a Coca-Cola, you start smiling. It's like that in a way is hypnosis. It's just flooding your critical mind, your capacity to reason and logic through things, flooding that to get a response. This can happen during trauma. This can happen during like big emotional moments, or it can happen in a controlled setting when you're in a relaxed state. And maybe we need to get you feeling more confident. Mm-hmm. So we flood your brain with message units, get you kind of to escape into hypnosis, and then start supporting the beliefs that you are confident, you are worthy, you are dangerous. Kill states, different kind of things for athletes that we want to bring out.
Yeah, even look at what happens on the news. I mean, people watching TV, that's kind of a state of hypnosis, right? They say, like, just taking in that information from the television over and over and over, the repeating stuff that they say.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there are probably more people hypnotized than not. Like how many people do you know that you're walking around, or maybe it's even you, that kind of have that glassy-eyed expression where they're there, but they're not really there, and they're very reactionary or influenced kind of by their environment.
Right.
It could be, you know, the social media influencer that they're feeding, and the next thing they know, they're getting really riled up or angry or whatever. Like, well, why am I hating this group of people or upset about this thing? And it's like, well, because we're scanning through all this stuff and it doesn't seem like it's hypnosis. That's just Instagram.
Right.
But what are you doing? Your eyes are down, they're glazed over, like you're in a relaxed state, almost in that half awake dream state. And next thing you know, you start having these beliefs that start to get fed. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to be alarmist, but China has been excellent historically in terms of mental warfare, like in terms of manipulating large populaces. I mean, just look at some of their history of what they've done. Mm-hmm. And then you got an app like TikTok, and that's culture or cultivated towards what you want to see, or these little messages. Like you start coming out with different natural feelings, and you're like, well, why am I stressed? Or why am I fearful? Or why do I hate my American brothers? Well, what do you think's going on? Like, you know, you're in this hypnotic state.
Yeah, and you're depleting your dopamine, just scrolling through all those shorts on TikTok. I mean, you're just all day long, you know, and the younger generation too. I mean, I'm sure that's going to affect them greatly as they get older.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be interesting to see. I've got a lot of hope for our next generation. That's something I'm pretty passionate about. But I think in terms of just hypnosis, sometimes it's about dehypnotizing people to not be so reactionary to their environment, but like kind of wake up. It's like, oh, wait a minute, like there's a world going on out here. Let me engage with it.
So it's kind of a good hypnosis and a bad hypnosis, I guess you could say.
It's a tool, just like money. You know, it's a magnifier. Like, how do we want to do it? Yeah. And when I looked at people who were life coaches or people who had phenomenal results, I began to see a correlation with training your subconscious mind. That's why I got certified as a master hypnotist from the only accredited hypnosis school, 500 hours of training, practical 300 hours of peer-to-peer hypnosis. I mean, it's a very rigorous program. Got certified in neurolinguistic programming, like NLP. That was Tony Robbins. I looked at like these different athletes, Tiger Woods, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, all of these people who had been hypnotized prior to competition or sports. I was like, well, what's going on? And I'm pretty skeptical, right? Like, let's be real. I'm pretty skeptical. When I first saw it, I was like, I think hypnosis is potentially bullshit. Like, it seems like, what is it? And so I can remember asking my teachers, like right out of the gate, it was a pretty big investment for school. I was like, hey man, is this actually a thing? Like, does this actually work? Or is it faith? Is it kind of like the placebo effect of like people just feeding into it? And the response was, well, it's kind of both. Like, yeah, you need a little faith to get results. But if somebody wants to get these results, and I think that's where you see the scientific studies where it's like, well, 20% of people can't be hypnotized. I don't think it's that they can't be hypnotized. I think that their critical mind is setting up blocks so that they're not allowing themselves to be hypnotized. What we talked
about in the beginning of this conversation, you have to want to change.
You got to want to change and trust the person doing it. And I think that's the other part is like you can have two people, one who is trained and one who is not trained, try to hypnotize somebody. And it's like, well, I'm going to know different things or techniques to get better results because I've done this a lot more, even though we're both trying to get to the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Is that something you have to be in person to do, or is that something that you can do virtually nowadays?
So, yeah, all my training was done virtually. I did it on Zoom. They have an in-person program, and I think that I am more effective in person. I think there's just, for me, I'm very kinesthetic, the touch, the feel, the environment of getting real with somebody. So I think I'm better in person, but I've had phenomenal results doing it by Zoom or even on phone. Like I've just hypnotized people over the phone, and I can't see. I mean, you got to worry about people passing out on you, like but it's been pretty good.
Yeah. I'm actually interested. They call you the Mental Sensei.
Yeah.
Where did that name come from?
Yeah. So they say you shouldn't give yourself a nickname, but when I was doing this,
it caught my eye. So.
Yeah. Great branding, right? Yeah. Well, when I looked at it, it was as simple as like, hey, that domain name was available, and I thought it sounded pretty cool. Sensei, means teacher, and I'm a teacher of the mind, so Mental Sensei.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk a lot about Stoicism. Is that something you're still currently into, or is that that you incorporate?
Yeah.
Because I've been reading the book Meditations.
Oh, really?
I'm actually not done yet, but I have noticed one thing. I don't think it's a book I'm ever going to be done with. It's almost like kind of like a Bible, like something you go to when you're feeling certain ways and you're like, God, why am I feeling like this? Let me open this up. Kind of have some highlighted passages, make sure you look through it, read them. It kind of calms you down. Is that how you feel too after you read that book?
Yeah. I mean, Marcus Aurelius is like, imagine a Roman emperor writing down all of his thoughts on leading one of the most famous superpowers that's grounded in composure and emotional control. Like it is riddled packed with wisdom. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll read that. I'll read the Bible. I'll read the Tao Te Ching. I mean, I pull like a lot of different, the Quran, I like Bhagavad Gita. Like, again, I kind of take a unique approach. I try to meet people where they're at, but I start studying different philosophies of all sorts of things. And Stoicism is a beautiful philosophy. It's great for composure. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, even Ryan Holiday, who kind of has modernized that.
Yeah, I follow him a lot on YouTube, man. I think he's got great content. Even Marcus Aurelius, man. I mean, it's crazy to think that an emperor with such power could be so humble. I mean, they said he was one of the 5 great emperors, or I think that's what they said, something like that.
I think he was Rome's best. For sure.
Yeah. And just to be able to be that humble and not, use his power, basically to do whatever he wanted. I mean, that takes a lot of self-control,
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't like to like vilify where we're at, but I mean, anybody can get anywhere. We have more resources available to us than ever before, but he really put into practice like the idea of like learning from mentors and writing and gathering his thoughts. I mean, like if you read the first couple chapters of that, it's just wisdom that he learned from other people. And then after he's gone through this diatribe of all the stuff that he's learned, then he gets into his own wisdom and like, okay, well, this is where I've taken that. And I just don't think people take the time to, I don't want to say all people, but most people don't take the time to do that anymore, to write down their thoughts or what they've learned or reflect on their own wisdom.
That's one thing I want to get into is journaling. I've always looked at keeping a journal like something that, a 12-year-old girl does, you know what I mean? But it's actually, from listening to Ryan Holiday, that all people should utilize. Writing down your thoughts. Basically, a journal is kind of like a way to express your emotions without judgment, because a lot of the times people will go to somebody and explain how they feel, and that's not always the best thing to do. It could be counterintuitive to what they're trying to do. It's better to put it on paper, kind of let it go, put it away, and then you can even come back a year later and see, oh, I've progressed. I've gotten past this, or maybe this is something we need to work on because we were dealing with this last year.
Right. Yeah.
But is that something that you kind of incorporate with your
personally? Yeah, I mean, I think thought, reflection, intentional thought and reflection. I mean, we're at the end of 2023 right now. This is a time when I'm challenging all of my clients to review. You are your greatest source of wisdom. Right. So like, this is where I'm asking my clients, go into the year and figure out, where was I winning? Where was I failing? Where did I lose? And start to capture this wisdom, and write it down because we forget. Podcasting is great. Yeah. And you see a lot of this obviously in media sources. Yeah. But it's very like, there's no, I don't want to knock anybody here, but there's no like thought behind it. When you take the time to organize your thoughts and get it on paper and construct it, man, that makes you dangerous. Like you're like, okay, like I know I've thought through this at great detail. I've written this down. I've taken the chatter and organized it into something that actually we have some legs with. And I think that's great for anybody.
If someone's to get started right now with change, is there any books or videos you recommend that they kind of start out with to kind of get that startup going?
With what kind of change? Just any
starting to want to change. I'm sure there's people that may be listening that are like, damn, I need to start doing something now. Like, what are those initial steps do you think they should start with in order to kind of jumpstart that?
Yeah, I mean, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen is a phenomenal read. Okay. If you want to go a little bit kind of deeper into that topic, I would say Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz is another great read. And both of these, and Napoleon Hill does it, Carnegie does it, like all of these guys kind of challenge your perception of self. And this is one of the big things that I coach. Mm-hmm. I start with understanding. I work to understand where you're at, but then I move to identity. Every single person will live to their perception of self. If you feel like you deserve a certain amount of income, a certain amount of life, you will vibrate or radiate harmonically around that line. Mm-hmm. I like to use income. Let's just take $100,000. If you feel like, I'm a $100,000 employee, this is what I'm going to make, then you're going to make $100,000. You're going to, get to that level. If you start going lower than that, you're going to be like, well, man, I need to pick up Uber or start an OnlyFans or Feet Finder or whatever. Like I gotta do some side hustles and I got to get back up to that $100,000. Yeah. But it also works the other way too. You start making 120, 140, you're like, I'm comfy. You know, you like, let me go back down because this is where my dad was or my mom was. This is what I was raised in. This is good enough for me, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll just vibrate right along that line. So if you are talking about transformation, you have to begin to change perception of self. Like, no, I'm actually this line. I'm $1 million person, not $100,000 person. And that will change your behaviors. Mm-hmm. That will change how you react to the world, what you're comfortable with, and your values. So again, perception of self, and then an extremely powerful why, the fuel of doing it.
Yeah, and the reason I asked for the startup is because I know we talk about businessmen, men and women, NFL players, fighters, but even just everyday people, I believe, could benefit off of this. You know, have you worked with any just regular 9-to-5 blue collar, white collar workers, or is that something that's kind of like missed? Like they don't really think that they don't have, like, they're not a fighter, they're not an NFL player, they're not a soccer player. They don't need to come to you because they're not at that level. When really, I think if you could help a lot of people, even just regular 9-to-5 people.
I look for the fighter in everybody. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we say this term like, 9-to-5, but that doesn't define somebody. For them, they might be fighting for their family to build a better life for their family. And yeah, if they want to do coaching, if they want to optimize who they are and their performance, by all means, I'll work with them.
Yeah.
But it's not a profession. It's a character. It's that drive. And I tell people this, I was like, I can't give you the spark. That's why I will turn down some certain clients, because I'll be like, you know, I had a lady bring her son to me and she was like, man, will you work with him? He's not showing up to practice. You know, he does this. And I was like, no, I'm not here to want it more than he is. You've got to want it. But if you've got that, then yeah, we can do good work. Yeah, and I don't care what life it's in. It could be basketball, NFL, or it could be like, hey, I want to be the, you know, package manager of FedEx or whatever. You know, it's like, it's whatever you're.
Yeah, because I think that'd be beneficial for a lot of people, man. I don't think that you have to be a blue check mark, or you have to be, you know, this, you know, top elite, you know, fighter or NFL player. I think even a lot of people that just are dealing with the daily grind of life and work could really benefit from that mental, you know, coaching of, hey, getting through struggles, getting through all the things that, you know, the daily grind, man. I mean, it's tough, you know, even for just regular folks, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that would help out a lot, man. And I hope anyone who sees this, you know, will reach out to you and kind of utilize you as a tool to help navigate through life.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, if you got the desire, if you're ready to like, hey, there's been a disconnect in me, but I really want this, or I want to go achieve this thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, hit me up. Like, we'll definitely do some work.
Well, man, I appreciate it, man. We're already at an hour, man.
Are we really?
Flew by.
Yeah, it's gone pretty quick.
It flew by, man. Is there anything you got coming up, man? Is there anything you want to talk about now that you're on?
I mean, I've got a few resources. When I first got started, I developed this Conquering Pressure series for athletes. And then, you know, later, about a couple years ago, I developed Conquering Your Fight Camp. Mm-hmm. So for an athlete who is in a fight camp, like it's a, 9-week course, 8 weeks of pre-fight preparation, 1 week of post-fight review. If you want a mental camp in a box, do it yourself, like it's there, it's done. Bite-sized lessons you can go through each and every week with homework to be mentally ready to go be your best. And right now it's free.
Are you working with any local gyms here right now?
I work with individual athletes, but I've worked with pretty much all the
in the area.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at one point or another, I've worked with athletes just about everywhere.
Where can they find that free?
Yeah. So if you go to @Mental Sensei, it's in my bio, or if you go to my website, it's under the shop tab. And again, it's a free download. You can just get on there and download the free, again, if you're in a camp, jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA, like it is, bro, you're not going to find a better product on the market.
Yeah.
Like I put a lot into it. I've accumulated,
awesome.
almost a decade worth of knowledge. And I put this in here and I was like, this is great. Now, most fighters don't watch stuff, and I get it. We're not going to go through courses, but I'm like, if you are self-motivated and you want something that's going to give you the playbook, go through this. Like if you go through this, you're going to feel more confident and mentally ready to dominate somebody.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And it's nice that you offer it for free too. You don't see that very often. So
yeah, I made the switch. I mean, when I first launched it, I'm not gonna lie, I was charging $400 for this thing. And I think it's worth every penny of that.
Right.
But I got kind of challenged and I was like, you know what? Like most fighters don't have a ton of resources. They don't have this. I was like, well, who do I want to be to this community? This community's given me a lot. I want to make it better. Here you go. Like you have no excuse now. There is absolutely no excuse for you not to be mentally ready for your next competition.
Yeah.
Everybody can afford free. It just takes the investment of your time.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to put in the time, then you're going to lose to the guy who is.
Yeah. Well, great, man. Hey, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Dude, Gabe, thanks for having me out.
I love learning, man. I learned a lot today, man. That's pretty awesome. And I kind of wanted to leave it off on this quote I found in Meditations, kind of see what your thoughts were on it. It says, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow free or flow well.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, man? Like, I kind of feel like that, I don't know, that one stuck out to me a lot, you know, because I think a lot of the times, like you said, we try to overanalyze things, kind of, you know, live in the past, live in the future, as we discussed. And I think if you just live as it actually is, like, just don't always think you have to have an opinion on things, just let things flow, you know. I think that's kind of the key to that piece.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, there's another one in there that says, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will gain strength. That's, you know, Marcus Aurelius. And that's the same kind of concept, is like when we can let go of the things we don't control and focus on, you know, he calls it your inner daemon, your spark, your light, and living authentic to that light. That's peace.
Yeah, and the next one I know I heard you talking about is Miyamoto Musashi. I've heard a lot of about him. So the Book of Five Rings, I actually started that one. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that one. Is it?
Yeah, man. If you want,
some of them are hard to get through, man. I'll be honest with you, man. Some of them are a little, I don't know. Maybe it's me. You know, I'm reading the audio, or I'm listening to the audio version of it. Maybe I should try to read it.
There are definitely books that I was like, hey, you know, listen to audio. That's great. That's one of the ones that I'd read a hard copy, because I feel like that's one, like Meditations. That's one you want to come back to. You want to highlight and study.
Right.
You know, Book of Five Rings, whether it's large scale or small scale military combat, you know, if you're in your one-on-one, is just packed with different strategies of how to do battle from a guy who, you know, won over 60 duels as a samurai swordsman. You know,
I always like too the guys on YouTube that kind of break down books. I think a lot of people nowadays, you know, I mean, you don't see a lot of people in libraries anymore, you know, checking out books.
Yeah.
You know, it's more of the video route on YouTube. Maybe that's something you look into, maybe breaking stuff down like that, you know, and kind of helping people understand, you know, giving them a quick guide to it.
Yeah, I definitely do that with my clients. I probably need to do a better job of that, putting it on the social media, because you're exactly right. You know, full disclosure, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I do read and listen to a lot of books. Like when I go into a subject, you know, I know people like kind of the intro or like the dialogue back and forth. That's great. But for me, I like to go drink deep in the well of somebody's knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, Caleb. It's been a good time,
Hey,
man.
thanks for having me out, brother.
Yeah, no problem, man.